Hey everybody, tonight we're going to be talking about the experience of being transgender and how that impacts our spirituality at a time when an alarming number of states and municipalities are poised to increase their attacks on human rights, especially reproductive rights and healthcare access, attacks on trans youth and the LGBTQ community in general. Our panel has graciously agreed to join us to kick off, to help us kick off the new Inner Alchemy podcast series, and to tell us how their spiritual path informs their experience as a trans person, and how their experience as a trans person informs their spiritual path. We'll hear from activists and entertainers, trans clergy, people from all walks of life, and you'll be invited to join the conversation, to be part of this conversation with us. And to do that, remember, you have to either be logged on to Twitter or YouTube and or give permission to Facebook to show your comments and questions. So if there's like a little pop-up or a little link at the top of the show in the Facebook group, you may have to give permission so that your comments show up. And you'll still have time to do that because we have got a little intro video coming up. There is bound to be mistakes tonight because this is my first time fully using the studio and doing it with a studio full of guests. So bear with me, and we'll be back on the other side.
Alchemy.
And we are back. Welcome everybody. Let me just do just a little bit more housekeeping, and I think we're good. Good to go now, and glad to see that you made it down here, Brenda. Let's see if we're going to check out some of my tech skills, and we are going to type in there. All right. So no, now you're sideways. So for those who don't know me, those who are watching for the first time, welcome. I'm John Michael Salvato. I'm a lifelong practitioner of the esoteric and magical arts, a healer, mystic, and one of the founding instructors at the Inner Alchemy Mystery School. My pronouns, as you'll see, everyone's pronouns on the broadcast are listed down below. In my case, they, them, as a genderqueer, non-binary person. And if you're watching Inner Alchemy for the first time, you may be unfamiliar with who we are. That's probably because we have never done this podcast before. This is a new show for me, and we'll talk about what's happening with the old show in a little bit. But this podcast is going to be focused on helping you unlock your potential to live your best and most magical life. So be sure to click like and subscribe and share our broadcast with anybody that you can think of that might vibe with what we're doing on here, because that helps keep the lights on, and the rest of the drill. So let's dig in, because I'm really excited about our guest tonight and about this conversation. It's one that I wanted to do for quite a while. It wasn't necessarily a good fit with the old show, and so, but it is a great fit now. So we have an unbelievably diverse, interesting, and beautiful group of people, a couple of whom could not be here tonight, and who fit in that category of amazing and beautiful people as well. But we've missed them, and we'll have them on another time. But this panel is going to discuss what we call transcending spirituality, a trans perspective on spirituality in today's culture. So the panel includes, in no particular order, one of just the order that it shows up on my screen, one of my favorite podcasters, an activist, advocate, and all around amazing athlete, Drew Forbes. Possibly we're going to see also another friend of ours coming on in a little bit. I didn't mean if they're watching and scrambling to get in, you can still get on, Noah, and we'll introduce you when you get here. In addition to that, we've got a Stonewall Rebellion activist, Brenda Roberts, and her wife. They're both my sisters-in-law. Shauna Roberts, a hairstylist and makeup artist and performer. And then we've got community organizer, teacher, contemplative, and artist who is one of my co faculty members and one of my favorite non-binary siblings, Michael Therese McQueen. So Michael will be taking over the host chair on my old show on The Brew, starting very soon with his beautiful co-host Annette Kimball, and so you can look forward to that sometime this summer. And so, folks, let me turn the chat on just so that I see it. Okay, so I've got the chat pulled up, and we'll pull the chat onto the screen. I'll take that graphic off. Someday I'll be rich enough to have an actual producer to do all this stuff for me.
Same.
They said they were going to be home tonight in time, but now they're out with their friends, probably smoking weed. So welcome to all of you on the show tonight. Let's just start off by having each one of you share 3 to 4 minutes of the highlights of your story on your overall journey as a trans person, without granular detail, because we're going to dig into the granular details in a little bit. But tell us, where your journey has taken you from where you're at now, and then how you would describe your spiritual path or spiritual tradition right now. And we'll go ahead and start with you, Drew.
Well, I actually grew up a little bit of Catholic, which is kind of interesting to say for everybody, and I had a good experience. My family is extremely open when it comes to Catholicism. I guess they kind of actually practice what they preach, which is nice. I really love them for that. So they didn't tarnish relationships with my spirituality as bad as other people. But as I gotten older, I kind of realized that organized religion is technically, to me, is just like the hub of all evil. I think everybody kind of is contextualism. And I started transitioning about a little over a year ago, which has been fun for me. And that's kind of been nice to do that as well. And in part of doing that, I started a podcast it was originally called Transforming a Drew, and I recently got a co-host. So it's called Transforming a Us, and I completely believe that the way to do this is between love and patience, because I am big on philosophy and taking care of people in the best way possible. And if we come out with everybody and saying, hey, we're transgender, or we're very loving, we're very passionate, and just do it in a way where we humanize ourselves, which is my goal, then I feel like I left the world a better place. It's actually something I learned from philosopher Cornel West, because I'm really big into philosophy and stuff too. So, and I'm also married.
Right on. And I love that you love Cornel West as well. Let's go ahead and move. I don't know how everybody's names disappeared, but we'll move now to Shauna and Brenda. Tell us a little bit about your journeys, what brought you from where you were to where you are now, because you both have fascinating stories, and how do you identify in your spiritual tradition?
I guess for me, can you hear all right?
Yeah, but bring the rest of your face, and there we go.
So for me, when I was growing up, we grew up strict Christianity, and I denied any possibility that LGBT could be anything but a concept, I guess, like a thing that people chose to do, even though I felt inside differently. And so for the first approximately 40 years of my life, that's what I did, is just deny, and try to pray it away, so to speak. And that changed a couple years ago when I just didn't feel like I could continue to be fake. And so I my marriage ended because she was very Christian and didn't want a LGBT person as her spouse. And but we stayed friendly, and so more. I've learned more in the last couple of years about everything LGBT that than I had in the previous 40. So now I've gone from questioning who I am, what I am, where I belong, to realizing that I was I'm just her put in the wrong body, and I'm doing everything I can to make the right body.
Right on. It's been such a privilege to watch that journey. Truly to see how amazingly far you've come in such a relatively short period of time. So, and now Brenda.
Okay. I guess I'm ancient uh, because back in the 60s, growing up, my family was very religious on my dad's side. I had two uncles who were preachers and an aunt who was a preacher. And so my parents didn't look at this whatsoever. And back in those days, nobody really had that much information. My dad thought it was something that you could turn on and off with a light switch. I knew at a very, very young age that, now I'm going back to the 50s, that there was something wrong with me. I could not find anybody else. I go to a doctor. They didn't know anything. And it was like kind of difficult. But I've always been a hard-headed, move forward type person. And sorry about the cat. So I just kept on moving forward. I found an article about Christine Jurgensen one day, and I read that and I was like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. This might be what's going on with me. So as years went by and I got older, I say we, but actually me, I started to seek out some of these names that was in this article about Christine Jurgensen. And I wound up meeting Dr. John Money at Hopkins, and I got into his program for reassignment. But Hopkins, and again, there wasn't a lot of information out there. And Hopkins was going on with these during the surgeries, and then the people after had surgery, they didn't like it, and they were committing suicide. So then Hopkins stopped it, cold turkey. And I thought, okay, being I'm in the program, I should continue what they let me. I went to New York, and when I was in New York, this is when I would go to the Stonewall Inn. And then in 1968, when the police was rioting, come into Stonewall, I was there. Thankfully, I didn't get arrested. I don't know, maybe I should have. It could have, I don't know what it would have done, but but I didn't because I passed. They had no idea that I was cross-dressed at that time. It was before I had my surgery. I never had a problem passing at all. I would dress when I was still living at home after I got older. I know I'm going all over the place. And everything was in my car. So I'd go to a gas station, into the restroom in the gas station, and change from one to the other. And then when I was ready to go home, I'd go back in and revert. But Stonewall was eye-opening for me. As I seen, I'm not the only one, because I met other, well, at that time we were called transsexuals, and I was able to talk with them and help. They helped me, I helped them. So I wound up having my surgery in 1977 in Nashville, Tennessee. And I haven't looked back since. I felt so comfortable. People that knew me before and then knew me afterwards said you're like two different people because I was so much more open. I wasn't hiding. And, you know, and I was open because I was finally comfortable with myself. I I got married to a cross dresser back in 2014, I think it was. He passed away. He had cancer. He was married to another trans person, but she passed away with AIDS. So our marriage didn't last very long. So I'm like, okay, what's the problem here with me? Am I going to be single for the rest of my life, like a lot of trans people are that I know? But then I met Miss Shauna here, and we got married again, and I'm as happy as I could be.
What an incredible story. And I'm looking at where you're sitting in the living room. And did you move pictures around on the wall, Shauna?
No, it's still there.
Can you? Yeah, I was going to say, this picture, just when I saw it, it just inspired. No, not that one. The one from the day that she transitioned. It's too small. It's right there behind you.
That one right there.
Let me see.
This picture just is everything for me. Snapshot in 1977 in time of the birth of a young lady.
Yeah, so it's pretty small.
Still with that pretty mischievous, with that mischievous look in her eyes, though. So you weren't innocent.
Nothing was going to stop me. Nothing was going to get in my way.
Yeah, that's not even easier.
There you go. That's perfect. That's so awesome. Thank you, Brenda.
You're welcome. And
Michael, I have to tell everybody I was really excited because one of the things that I saw other than Drew's show, and Drew, I apologize that I couldn't remember the new name of the show. And I was like, no, you can't say Transforming with Drew. And I couldn't remember your co-host's name. I was like, maybe it's both of their names.
It is both of our names. We're both Drew, but it's Transforming with us. He's just Andrew and I'm Drew. So I'm Drew with the U, he's Drew with the EW.
So other than your show, like in all of the years that I've been watching and hanging out on podcasts for our community, the part that was often left out were those of us that were non-binary. Mm-hmm. And to the point that as a non-binary person, a couple weeks ago, we were actually sitting at a local club and waiting for Brenda and Shauna to meet up with us. And somebody that was at the club from our community said that I had longer hair on that night and much more dramatic appearance, and not that femme, not that butch. And they said, "Oh, honey, there's no such thing as non-binary. Non-binary just means you're not comfortable saying that you're trans femme." And I decided I just didn't even want to be out anymore. It would like ruin the rest of the night. So I'm thrilled to have somebody else on the show tonight. So it doesn't have to be me yammering on about stuff I already know about me. So Michael, tell us about your journey and your spiritual identification.
Sure. So I was raised Southern Baptist. So I was raised, all you needed was Jesus and fried chicken. And so when I have to say that my experience of growing up within the Baptist church wasn't negative, but when we would talk about, LGBTQ issues in church, that's when there would be a negative spin. And even though it wasn't that often, those topics would come up on occasion and they would always be in the negative. So I grew up with that very negative view of LGBTQ topics. But from a very young age, I was also very self-aware that I was very different than the other young men in my age group and very different than my peers. And, I had a very real understanding of what it meant to be gay from a very young age. Fast forward to when I was 18, I converted to Catholicism and then came out all in the same year. So my family was doubly confused because the Baptist has now become a Catholic and now says that they're gay, and they couldn't make sense of it. So there was that. But as I grew in kind of Catholic mysticism, I noticed that in my inward life, I resonated with things that were traditionally considered very feminine spirituality. Images such as like the Bride of Christ, or um, being a vessel of being an archetype of the church, very feminine understanding. And even growing up, inwardly, I always had this very resonance with things that were very traditionally feminine. And it wasn't until I was living in Japan and one of the Japanese students that I was with was told me, they were like, "Oh, you have an otome kokoro," which translates out to a maiden's heart. And for that person, it meant that I was trans. And I was like, I don't think that's so much of what it is. But it wasn't until recently, another podcaster who's in the metaphysical realm, named Britton Boyd, she said, she pointed out, she's like, my presentation is feminine, but my inner ecology is masculine. And when I heard her say it, I was like, that's what I've been trying to define for myself for my whole life, where it's kind of like my outer appearance and presentation is masculine, but my inner ecology is feminine. And so that is really where I am on this journey. And also that has now also translated spiritually into being a folk magic practitioner from the Catholic faith. And so that's in a nutshell.
Well, we'll stick with you, and because you're right at that precipice of what my next question was, I wanted to hear. And before I ask that, let me just remind our viewers and listeners that if you have any questions, go ahead and ask those. We'll be sharing those with the panel tonight, and we would love to hear from you. This is your show as much as it is all of ours. Share your experiences. All we ask everybody is to try and keep your comments brief, because when you write like a full paragraph, it gets chopped off by the software, and then we can't really see what you're trying to communicate. But the next question I have, and we'll start with you, Michael, is how, if at all, has being trans informed your spiritual path, and vice versa? How has your spiritual path, if at all, informed your journey and experience as a trans person?
I think for me, as being a non-binary person, where it has impacted my spiritual path and my spiritual practice is that it's like I feel like, I want to say it's almost like I'm at a crossroads of a meeting point of the masculine and the feminine, and what those two sides of those two different sides of the spectrum mean. There's this very interior feminine life that I have, but it's like, how do I translate that into the world as a person who presents a lot more masculine? And so that's where it really impacts that place of kind of being within the realm of both the masculine and the feminine almost simultaneously, and then bringing that union to the world. And so that's where I'd say that's where the impact is for me.
Wow, right on. Same question for you, Brenda and Shauna, and you can pick who goes first.
Thanks. So I would say my spirituality was hit hard when I decided to be part of the community. And I often refer to like just being part of the LGBT community because I didn't know for sure where I would land when I started to explore myself. But I just knew that it was strictly bad in the previous faith that I had. And so it took me a while to just get over the idea that it had to be bad because someone told me it was. So nowadays I'm still kind of on a search, and I do like I have a faith in a higher being, but I'm still trying to find where it belongs in my life. So
Right on. That makes sense.
Well, as far as me, I grew up in a very religious family, Methodist family. Like I said earlier, my dad had brothers and sisters who were in Methodist, yeah, who were preachers. We went every Sunday, of course, to the church. I grew up with the church. Did I have feelings? I kind of did. Um, but my other feelings was that, all right, okay, the Lord, as they say, does not make mistakes. I like, yes, the Lord makes mistakes, and I was a mistake. Um, but through further thinking on this matter, I went back to when I was in my mom's womb as to when the mistakes really happened. So, you know, does it go with that or not? That the Lord making mistakes? I don't know. As I grew older, I drifted away um, from, you know, Christianity, so to speak. And then I found the MCC, and I was going to the MCC for quite a while. I haven't lately, but do I believe in a supreme being? I have to say that I do, uh, because so many things have happened. And my belief is everything happens for a reason, and the things that have happened to me, good and bad, I can always look back and find a reason. So yeah, I'm out there in the religion world.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that were you United Methodist Church?
I'm sorry.
Was your family United Methodist Church?
Yes, they were.
Yeah, they're just going through a schism at this past weekend as we speak right now. The meetings are going on, and they're going to split into from the United Methodist Church and the Global. The Global Methodist Church will be the homophobic and turfy communion, and United Methodist will be the inclusive one.
Right.
Wow.
Well, in a way, that's kind of like why I went to MCC, because MCC, they took everybody.
Yeah. Okay, Drew, how has your journey influenced one way or the other?
Well, I was a little kid that sang in the church choir. I was doing those solos, singing all those songs and stuff. I was actually, so when my mother passed, I was raised by my dad and my aunt who was Catholic. And when we moved from Maryland to Florida, I was no longer required, so to speak, to go to church. So I was waking myself up as a little kid, 9 or 10, walking to church by myself while my parents were, I don't know, hungover or high on something. So I was really a devout kid, and starting to come out as, before I realized what I was, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm just a lesbian and stuff, and I got really distant. I started kind of panicking a little bit, and even though my family was good, I had a lot of friends who weren't so good with that, and a lot of church faith and stuff like that was used against me. As I gotten older, I realized kind of what, to play off of what they were saying is that everything happens for a reason. So, at 19, I even tried to come out as trans to a partner at the time. Didn't work at all. I recloseted myself for so many years, and it wasn't until my wife, when we first started dating, kind of like, look, if you ever decide to transition, I'll still love you, that I accepted to come out as, who I was. So slowly, it took me a while. I was still stubborn with my own self back then. And once I realized that I was okay and that everything did happen for a reason, that I was meant to go on this journey in this time, I started kind of being more relaxed about things. Again, I'm probably the person that doesn't do organized religion. I believe that, God is non-binary. I normally tend to use the she stuff because I do think, technically we all start off as, that's why women had nipples. We all start off as technically a female in the womb. So I kind of always make the joke that God is female, but in a kind of a strong way because women are very strong and stuff like that. But I do agree. There's no mistakes. There's no mistakes made. My journey is just mostly about being here in the present, being here in the moment, and doing the best that I can. And I am thankful for the path that I was put on.
Right on. Did you go to St. Augustine's or St. Mary Magdalene?
What? I didn't go anywhere when I was a kid.
No, I mean in Orlando.
Oh no. So technically, oh gosh, it was right next to the Valley Fitness off of 436. I remember the neighborhood used to be called Players Park. I can't remember what it was since that long ago. So
Okay.
yeah. I probably could look it up though. Whatever. I think that fitness place is a school now. I think the church is still there, but it was the only church near me, but it was a small church.
Oh, okay.
But I do think it was Southern Baptist, honestly.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a Catholic school.
No, there was no Catholic church near me. I did go to All Souls Catholic Church though a couple years before I met my wife. I was going there, and that's in Tanford.
Was just curious. Well, I guess I owe it to those who are new here to kind of answer those same questions, and so I'll answer kind of both at once. How my or what my spiritual tradition is, and how the experience of being trans influenced my spirituality, and vice versa. I grew up in a traditional Italian Catholic family, but somewhat untraditional as well, because we were esoteric Catholic, very mystically oriented, and practitioners of Italian folk magic. And so when you took that in tandem with the Catholicism, naturally, when I was 16 years old and I graduated high school, it was time to go to the seminary. I had this idea from the time I was 13 or 14 that religion needed to be made obsolete, and that was really the job of preachers and pastors and priests and nuns, was that if we teach people the message I was hearing when I would study, was that the sovereign domain of everything sacred is within you. That generally gets written in patriarchal language as the kingdom of God is at hand. But I understood that as a kid to mean the sovereign domain of the sacred is within me. And if it's within me, then what do I need to go to church for? And seminary only reinforced that and made me understand those concepts even more deeply, and understand that really and truly, if I was going to be of service to humanity, I had to be able to let people know that so much of the harm that was done in the world, from my perspective, was done in the name of religion, when the healing was going to be done in the name of love and compassion and forgiveness and communication and understanding. So my journey, and from a very early age, I was lucky that my grandmother and a couple of my aunts, who were kind of my mentors growing up, were well aware of who I was and that I was different. And we have our own phrases for it in Italian, but similar to the Native American concept of two spirits. My aunt would say he's half a cup of coffee, half a cup of cream. So they made me feel good about myself. My cousin, who was the closest person to me growing up, we spent all of our summers together, slept in the same room. He would look out for me as my he was a couple years older than me, 6 years older than me, but as kind of like the butch, super manly cousin, he would keep an eye out and make sure the kids weren't bullying his younger cousin, and would tell me at night, hey, you need to be careful because it's really obvious that you like so and so, and that might create problems for you. And then we would have these long discussions that I think allowed me to kind of flesh out the idea that I wasn't this or that, but we didn't have vocabulary back then for well, what does that mean? And so I went the gamut from doing drag, because initially I thought that maybe that was the answer, and I loved it and I was good at it and had fun with it, but that wasn't the answer. To In 2000 or 1990, when my partner of 6 years died, I briefly went on hormones. That definitely wasn't the answer. When changes started to happen, I definitely knew that wasn't the direction that I wanted to go, and it caused all kinds of health problems as a result of trying to revert that process. And it was, in probably the last 15, 16 years that I started to come to terms. And I think the experience of being a non-binary person um, impacted my spirituality in that I could really understand why traditional spirituality would never work for me, because I couldn't conceive of a personal God, of a God that was a person. And as a result of that, my concept of God had to be the ground of being, because it had to be just like me. Otherwise, I really would have been a mistake. And so my God concept is non-personal. It's creative intelligence. My worldview is that this is a hologram, and that we're the universe or God or creative intelligence figuring itself out. And I know for some people that just sounds really, really crazy. My sister-in-law is probably already thinking, God, I gotta make sure I sit at the other end of the table from that nut job, because we're going to see them for our nephew's birthday tomorrow. Um, and and that's what brought me to where I am today. Now I run the mystery school and try and help people find that power that we've always looked for outside of ourselves, inside of ourselves. And when I think when that happens, it becomes a lot harder to draw lines in the sand. It becomes a lot harder to not like somebody else for what they believe, because it becomes really clear that it's none of my effing business what somebody else believes. As long as they're on their journey and they're true to themselves, my responsibility is kind of to be supportive of them. So thank you everybody for that. Again, if you're watching and I'm trying to watch the comment section. I know there was a comment that came up from Seth when Brenda was talking, and Seth said, "That's so inspiring that you've been able to hold on to that hope and positivity after." So thank you, Seth, and that is Drew's beautiful lady. It's great to hear from you folks, and if you're watching on the replay, we'll all try and kind of check back with the Facebook page or the YouTube page, and see if people put any comments. We'll try and answer those. If you have questions for any of us, feel free to ask those. I kind of wanted to wrap up because we're at the 40-minute mark. We usually try to go 45 minutes. We will obviously go a couple minutes over if it's all right with everybody. But I want to talk about something that I think is really important, because I know personally that there are a number of my friends' kids who are watching tonight. And because they're kids, I'm not going to even mention your first names, but I'm so happy, and can't say too much about it because I'll have a Kodak moment. But I'm so happy. Most of us didn't have anything like this when we were kids, and so because these trans young men and trans young women are watching, I really felt like we needed to talk about the fascist actions that are coming to light in this Supreme Court leak, that will not only deprive women of their bodily autonomy and healthcare access, that not only does horrific injustice to the world in terms of healthcare access and safety, but also opens the door plain as day to racial discrimination, LGBTQ discrimination, and depriving healthcare access to trans people, which has already been enough of a friggin' nightmare for so many people to the present day. So I would love to hear what what all of y'all's thoughts are on this legislation, and if you could, when you're done sharing what you think, if you because we are shortish on time, if there's a message that you could give to the young people that are watching, let it rip. So go ahead. We're going to go ahead and start with you on this one, Seth. I mean, Drew.
Everybody does that. Okay, I have a lot to say about this, but probably because I work for Pride Media, which is Out Magazine and the Advocate Magazine, so we actually take a different stance on a lot of people's. It's like we want to make sure everybody knows what's happening. So, growing up Catholic, I also know somewhere around in numbers, or about, can't remember exactly what it is, but it says that abortion's okay in the Bible. And people tend to forget that, and that's why they try to use religion against it. Like, well, no, you can't do that. It's against the Bible. Well, it's not true. Men actually used to say it was a good thing, and they used to prescribe it. But when you take, it's mostly about the control of the women that they're doing, and this type of aspect that's kind of driving me a little bit much. Or even AFAB people, because I have plenty of friends who are seahorse dads and want to be seahorse dads. It's your situations happen, and that can't be the only situation. If the person doesn't want a kid, they don't want a kid. If they can't bring a child, they can't bring a child. And like even what you were saying, it does do a lot of racial injustice as well. So when it comes to my thoughts on this Supreme Court leak, I think it was done on purpose to warn a lot of people, and they subtly didn't care or suddenly didn't want this to happen. But I think that this is the time to vote right now, because everybody only thinks of the presidential vote, but I know voting actually opened today in Massachusetts as well, and a lot of other places, because you can actually vote all like the senators and the Congress people and all them. You can vote them out now. Like you could vote every 2 years for that. All right, so that's my rant on that. But I do have a very important message that I love to end all my podcasts with, and it's live your purpose and live your truth. And what I mean by that is, it's all fun and games until someone loses an eye, which is your inner self. So just live with your inner self, find where you belong, and understand that you don't need to fit in, because fitting in is just the status quo. Belonging is where you feel loved. So
Wow, that was awesome. I'm glad I wasn't necessarily on a close-up on screen for that. Belonging is definitely what it's all about. I appreciate that. Ladies, let's hear from y'all.
So essentially, I feel like it's terrifying because one choice, one law, one break in the law leads to the next. And we're already at such a pivotal point that it's frightening to think that we could just totally roll back to the 50s. And I agree with the idea that somebody knew that it needed to be leaked so that people could prepare and kind of fight back. And so it's really, I guess, to the young people, I would say keep fighting. To anyone who can, yes, get out and vote, and make your voice heard. You know, whatever your points of view are, it's important that we have that variety in the public forum so that everybody can be heard and every person can be listened to. So that's essentially it for me.
Okay, well, I can say kind of what she said, but now it's like, why do these people in the Supreme Court, and majority of them being men, where do they come off by telling a woman what they can do and what they can't do with their body? True, after, I don't know, they're saying after 6 weeks there's a heartbeat or whatever. But I think abortion should be up to the individual. Again, people might be in a place where they can't afford to have another child. So what's that going to do? That's going to put another person on welfare, and it's just going to hurt everybody else. As far as the money goes to raise the child may not have a great life. It might, grow up on the streets, and what do I say? Become a criminal, I guess. But again, I think it should be up to the individual, and the Supreme Court should not have the say to change this law. And again, like Shauna said, to the younger people, get out there, voice your opinion, vote, and let's try to keep this from happening.
Right on. Thank you. And yeah, they talk an awful lot about how precious life is, but that preciousness seems to end at the beginning of the birth canal, or
Yep.
the end of the birth canal. Um, it's disgusting. Michael, how about you?
So, as a person who spent a lot of their path within the pro-life movement, that this was something that I would have advocated for as little as maybe 10 years ago, or even 6 years ago. This is something that I would have advocated for and had a change of heart, especially when I saw that the pro-life movement, again, just didn't care about anything systematic that causes abortion, the racial issues, the economic issues, the rights of women. That I realized that the pro-life movement really wasn't pro-life, as we've just kind of re-echoed. It's just pro-birth, but it doesn't want to change the systematic issues that lead people to make the choice of abortion, which should be their choice to begin with, but they don't want to fix any of the systematic issues around it. So I look at the Supreme Court leak as this is just taking us back, and it has nothing to do with about preserving life or respecting life. It's just about furthermore controlling those who are able to give birth, because it's not just cis women who are able to give birth, it's transgender men who can give birth, and it's just controlling and manipulating those bodies for whatever purposes that they think it is, whether it be a religious one or whether it be a political one. And my message for the youth is just to re-echo, to go out and vote, make your voice heard. But also for those who are kind of questioning themselves and questioning their identity, be able just to take that path and take that journey, and don't be afraid of the surprises or the unexpected things that may come up in that, and fully embrace them when they come up and wrestle with them and find the answers that work for you.
Right on. And I would just echo everything that everyone said here. Get out and vote. Get one person that who's not going to vote to get out and vote. And to our young people, I would just say, just please know that you're not alone. That there are plenty of us in the community, people in, no matter how scary it gets in Florida with the Don't Say Gay bill, there will still, I promise, there will still be allies in your schools, in your communities, in your neighborhoods, where somebody can at least point you in the right direction of someone that you can speak to safely, but do that safely, because there are also people out there who have their own agendas, and we want you to be safe first. So for our guests, please don't go away yet, because I want to thank you, but I do want to mention something that's coming up as we get ready to celebrate the I don't even know how many years it was. I think 53 years and a day from Stonewall, from the Stonewall Rebellion. On in next month's show, we will have somebody that I've been trying to get on my broadcast forever. So our official LGBTQ Pride episode, which I think I have an overlay. Yeah, there we go. Featuring gifted author and teacher, poet, and professional warlock Storm Fairy Wolf, who is the founding teacher of Black Rose Tradition, a contributor at modernwitch.com, practitioner of fairy witchcraft. That's the Anderson Fairy Tradition. Again, that's going to be on June 29th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll talk about his incredible new book, The Satire's Kiss, Queer Men, Sex Magic, and Modern Witchcraft, which is brilliant. I just got it in the mail this morning and could not put it down throughout the day. And I know I'll be reading it again when the show's over. So I'm happy to have him on here. We'll be talking about the intersectionality of Storm's work and experience as a practitioner of the esoteric and magical arts and what it means to be queer in today's society from their perspective. And it promises to be a really good time. There will be some other broadcasts between now and then, because the fun thing about the Inner Alchemy podcast program is that when the mood strikes me in between these official broadcasts, I may jump on for 15, 20 minutes and just share an idea, a thought, or some food for thought with you guys. So stay tuned, because those will be coming as well. And to all of our amazing guests tonight, thank you so much for being here. This is another one of those shows that I've wanted to do for quite a while. And this hour has absolutely flown by. And for those who are watching and listening, thank you for tuning in. Help us get the word out. If you think this will vibe with somebody, if you think this will help somebody, go ahead and share that with them. And to all of you on the panel, again, thank you so much. You have my heart. And this will be available for rebroadcast almost immediately on Twitter and YouTube and on Facebook in the Inner Alchemy group. So until next time, we will see everybody later. Wait, there's another. Let me see if we had any other comments. There were plenty of comments. I'm going to go ahead and put those up on the screen so that we don't miss them. Gina says, thank you all so much for your honesty and sharing your stories. Seth says to Michael that you explained that so well. And Gina again says, love to all. Enjoy the rest of your evening. So thank you to our guests for tuning in as well. And anybody watching on the replay, put your comments down below. And if you're watching the replay, let us know where you're watching from. And to our little four-legged friends, we love you as well. And we'll talk to everybody.